This is how to get lean so easy it feels illegal. I've gone from 25% to 10% body fat. People say to get this lean, it's unachievable and unsustainable, but it literally felt effortless to get here. To get lean, I used the two-stage concept. Stage 1 is getting from 30+% body fat to 20%, and stage 2 is getting from 20 to sub 10% body fat. It's 2 stages because it's a different strategy that you have to use to get from 30 to 20 versus 20 to sub 10. So in stage 1, from 30 plus to 20% body fat, this is the easiest part. All you need to worry about is lowering your calorie intake. You can literally get to 20% body fat by eating McDonald's. While I definitely don't encourage you to do that, it's doable. I started out skinny fat, somewhere in that 30% body fat range, and I lost 10 kilograms. I went from 75 to 65 kilograms in 6 months just by simply putting the fork down and reducing the portion sizes of what I was eating. I would always have rice for dinner. I would normally take 3 scoops of rice, but instead I started taking 2 scoops and then 1.5 scoops. And it was just by exercising portion control with the foods that I was already eating that allowed me to drop weight so easily. And I applied this portion restricting mentality to all types of foods. So I would normally eat whole packets of chips in one sitting, and I restricted it to eating only half a packet of chips. It's such a simple method. It makes that initial stage of fat loss so easy. When you're beginning out fat loss, you want the strategy that you're using to be simple. Because if you've got too many competing ideas in your head as to what fat loss should look like, then you're not going to stick to anything. So the number one thing that you should focus on when you're trying to go from 30+% body fat to 20% is just restrict the amount of food you're eating, the portion sizes of what you're already eating. Don't try switch up your diet immediately. If you just focus on putting the fork down and stopping eating so much food, you will effortlessly drop weight. It's so good because you feel so much better after getting leaner to 20% body fat. In the 6 months that I lost 10 kilos, I literally felt like a new person. So at this stage, all you need to worry about is lowering your calorie intake by lowering your portion sizes. But if you want to take your fat loss to the next level by getting to the 10% and below 10% body fat, then you have to start thinking more broadly, which brings me to stage 2. To get from 20 to sub 10% body fat, it's a different game because you cannot simply rely on just putting the fork down and reducing your portion sizes to get that lean. There are 2 reasons for this that are solved by 2 solutions. The first reason is that food quality is important for fat loss as well. When you go from 30 to 20% body fat, it's easy to look at the strategy you used to get there and think that that's also applicable to going from 20 to 10%. When you're eating shit foods, despite them being in lower quantities, this is going to negatively impact your fat loss results, especially when you want to get below 20% body fat. That's why I struggled to get below the 20% body fat mark for so long, because I was just eating shitty foods. When you're eating chips, chocolate, lollies, biscuits, all of these foods have garbage ingredients that go into them. And that is making fat loss so much harder for you. Things like seed oils, emulsifiers, flavor enhancers, and all of the random garbage ingredients that you see on food labels that you have no idea what they are. These things are having serious negative impacts on your body's energy levels, satiety, and hormones. Simply put, most foods that are out there these days, whether you're eating out at a restaurant or you're buying things off the shelf from the supermarket, like cereal, these things are zapping your energy levels, making you hungrier, and are lowering your testosterone levels. So when you're eating foods that are making you hungrier, well then you're more susceptible to binge eating. And so your calorie intake is going to be higher. When you're eating these foods that are also zapping your energy levels, it means you're going to have low energy. You're not going to want to train as much, and you'll be less generally active throughout the day. And so the calories you burn will drop. And so when you combine a higher calorie intake with a lower calorie burn, then it's just all the more difficult to be in a calorie deficit and continue to lose fat. So the solution is to cut out all of these low quality foods. You should not be eating any processed foods, which means if a food is not naturally occurring, then you shouldn't be eating it. These are just foods that you wouldn't be able to find in nature, foods that primal humans wouldn't have had access to. So obviously things like McDonald's and chips are not naturally occurring, but there are also foods that are a bit more misleading, like high protein microwave meals that consist of broccoli, chicken, and potatoes. But when you actually look at the ingredients that go into these types of microwave meals, you'll see that there's a heap of shit that also goes into it. Same with protein bars and all of these protein snacks, like protein ice cream or protein pizza. They're all making you hungrier, making you less energetic, and are ruining your testosterone. You need to eat natural foods, foods that are single ingredients. So think meat, vegetables, fruits, potatoes, rice. These foods are lower calorie. They're going to be more satiating. They're going to give you more energy, and they're going to boost your testosterone levels. So you're going to have an easier time being in a calorie deficit and continuing to lose fat. And also, you'll find it easier to build muscle when you're eating clean, natural, single ingredient foods. The rule is that if it's not naturally occurring, then you shouldn't eat it. Eating clean and natural makes fat loss effortless because you're never hungry. You always feel energetic, and your hormones and testosterone are putting your body in a very anabolic environment, which is conducive to losing fat and building muscle. The second reason is that your calories burned drops. When you reach 20% body fat, your basal metabolic rate, or the amount of calories that you burn at rest, will have dropped compared to when you were at 30% body fat. So at 30%, you might have burned 3,000 calories every day at rest. Whereas when you're at 20% body fat, you might only burn 2,500 calories. So because you're burning less calories, it's going to be relatively harder to be in a calorie deficit because you'll be forced to eat less calories to be in a deficit. And this is why everyone plateaus on their fat loss after a while, because their basal metabolic rate drops whilst they keep their calorie intake the same. So if you do lower your calorie intake even further to continue being in calorie deficits to try and lose fat, the issue becomes that you feel hungry all the time because you've limited your calories quite excessively. You'll feel less energetic because you're not eating as much food as you're used to. When you train in the gym, it might feel really hard. You might not be getting pumps. You might not be getting stronger because your body just doesn't have enough energy. The solution to this problem, and bear with me, it is cardio. 3 sessions, 45 minutes every week. Cardio is the biggest cheat code to get lean, especially from 20% to 10%. It's so much easier than starving yourself and reducing your calorie intake further and further and further, to the point where you feel like you're a prisoner of war. So this is my concept with cardio. Let's say you burn 2,500 calories every day at rest. Scenario A is you not doing cardio. So to lose fat and be in a calorie deficit, you have to be eating less than 2,500 calories every day. You might feel hungry having to do that. It might also require extreme discipline to make sure you're eating less than 2,500 calories every day. You have to be on point with accurately tracking your calories, which can be so hard to do. You might also feel low energy and tired because you're just restricting your calories quite low. So for 24 hours of the day, you feel tired, low energy, hungry, and it requires extreme discipline to make sure that your tracking is all on point. That's 24 hours of hard work. That's constant throughout the day. Whereas in scenario B, where you are doing cardio and in a 45-minute low intensity cardio session, you burn 500 calories. To be in a deficit, you can eat less than 3,000 calories. That is a lot easier. You don't need that extreme discipline with your tracking and portion control anymore because you've got that 500 calorie leeway. You'll feel more energetic and not hungry all the time because you're allowed to eat more calories, but you're still in a deficit because of the cardio that you've done. So for 23 hours and 15 minutes of the day, you're chilling because you're not hungry, you're not tired, you have energy. But in that 45 minutes of cardio, yeah, it might be hard. But that is worth it for the other 23 hours and 15 minutes of the day to be easy. So it's actually easier to do the cardio versus not doing the cardio. I'm doing cardio nearly every day. And by doing that, I burn heaps of calories. So I literally never have to track my calorie intake. I of course eat clean, but I don't worry at all about portion sizes. I can eat to my heart's content and I stay at 10% body fat. It's easy. Again, because you're choosing to do 45 minutes of work in cardio for the other 23 hours and 15 minutes of the day to be easy. And I find that that is a much more achievable and sustainable method to get to 10% body fat, as opposed to busting your ass off for the whole 24 hours of the day. So if you learned anything from this video, please consider subscribing. We're getting to 20K subs soon, and I'll see you in the next one.